Hey guys, welcome back to this series. This is part 5 of an Ansonia clock dismantle, service, reoil, clean, inspection. Not really a restoration, but you know what I mean. It's been a bit of a saga. This is the final part and it won't take too long to get through this. In the last episode we got it completely assembled, and after cleaning and everything it all went back without too many hitches. It was quite fiddly work and it runs. So what I've got to do now, I've just fitted, since the last episode, I've just fitted the suspension spring on the front. We do need to oil it, so that's next. Then we'll mount it on a test stand. I did make up a little test stand here, just a couple of bits of wood, just to give us somewhere to screw the clock so we can have it level enough to run, and then we can just run it for a week. It is an 8-day movement, so it should go for a week. But first of all, we're going to oil it. Then once we're happy with it all, it can go back in the case, and basically we just have to set the beat, make sure everything's right there, and job's finished. So let's get the oiler out and oil the movement. So let's get you nice and close here. I have a clock oiler with a little needle so that we can't over oil it. It's critical on a clock, and I've mentioned on numerous videos, and if anyone's researching oiling clocks, you will see on just about every YouTube video where anyone who knows what they're talking about will advise you only need the tiniest dot of oil on each of the pivots. Any over oiling which causes the oil to drip out, and remember the movements go vertical, if you have a drop form on a pivot hole that is enough for it to track down the plate, what will happen, it will suck all the oil out of the pivot. I think it's surface tension that does it, and it will obviously make a mess on the plate, and if you have excessive oil it's going to drip onto the bottom of the clock case. But if you have enough to run out of the pivot, it will suck all the rest of the oil out, and basically the pivot will run dry. Bad news. So you only want the tiniest dot. It really doesn't need much at all. We have to oil both sides of the pivot, so we'll start on the front plate here. You don't oil any of the wheels themselves, any of the teeth. They're brass. Brass is a soft metal. They're designed to run dry. The only other spots you put some oil, I'll put a little bit around the center hour tube, and a little bit on the pellet, the actual part that tick-tocks back and forward in here, just a little bit on the face of the pellet on each side. But we don't oil any of the pinions, any of the teeth, just the pivots and the few other bits I mentioned. So I'll go ahead and just run around that now, and we just want a dot on each pivot. And we'll just put a little bit on the winding arbors, just so that they can track in. I didn't mention the type of oil. I'm using a fully synthetic automotive oil, a 0W40 actually. Let me just show you the bottle. From everything I've read, this is an excellent clock oil. Being a fully synthetic, it won't cause any issues with the brass, and it has a very long life. And I believe that it's the best, the most recommended. Now, you could certainly go off to a clock shop or a retailer of clock parts and buy a special clock oil, which are hugely expensive. This 1 litre bottle of synthetic oil is going to last me for at least 4 or 5 lifetimes, I should imagine. And I think it was only about $40. Now I'm going to get a little bit underneath the hour tube. I probably should have put a bit of oil on this when I actually first assembled the movement, but I can get in here okay with this needle. But I'm not oiling any of the teeth. Okay, I think we've done everything on this side. We'll put a little bit on the pivot for the hammer. Anything that moves through a hole really needs a little bit of lubrication. So I think we've done everything there. Oh, this pivot here is for the control arms that work the strike mechanism. And we've done everything else, so we can spin it over and do the other side. We did oil the springs in a previous episode, and we used a synthetic oil there as well, but a slightly heavier grade. That is everything on that side. So just a little bit now on the pallet faces. And we're done. Now I've noticed that our suspension spring has fallen out, but that's not a problem. When I first took this out, the top post was squashed very tightly together. I think I should probably just squash it back in a little bit, just so it's a bit firmer. It doesn't have to be super tight. I think it's going to spring apart anyway. Oh, that's a little bit firmer. That'll do. Okay, clock movement is now oiled, and it should run quite nicely now when we have it at the right angle. And I will mount it on our test board shortly. And there we go, it's running away all by itself. Just a couple of other spots I thought of after I finished filming that last section. I've put a tiniest amount just where the pendulum rod goes through the, I think that's called the crutch. So just where you have metal contact there. I also did a little bit on the clicks and just under the actual click ratchet part, because they are friction areas. They only really come into play when you're winding the clock. It's not actually friction that's going to stop the clock, but I think it needs a little bit of lube there. And I think that was it. So we can now mount it on our test stand. I'm just checking that the movement here, it mounts nice and square in the case. I might have said earlier it mounted on a bit of an angle. I've had a few clocks where the movement for some reason mounts on a weird angle, but this one's fairly straight, so I can mount it straight on our little test stand, and then we'll set it up from there. Look, it's trying to strike. So I'll just line it up by eye with the base of the stand. It only has to be close. We can shim one side if we need to. I'll just put a couple of screws into the plywood here. And 2 will do, can hang from those. So now we can turn our stand up the other way. And it's not ticking, but that's because it's well out of beat. We've probably bent the crutch, so it feels like it wants to tick over this side. So we can slightly bend the crutch to alter where the pendulum hangs. We'll put the pendulum on it because even though they will run with the pendulum off. Oh, did we make it long enough? Oh, just. A pendulum just clears the base. I didn't even measure that. I didn't realize it was so long. Anyway, that's cool. Okay, I did make a few adjustments just then. I raised the movement a bit higher so that we had clearance below the bottom of the pendulum. It was so close that I think it was even touching sometimes. And I've had to chock the back of my stand a bit. Whether I didn't quite get a right angle, I don't know. I didn't even worry about that. I just made a right angle, and maybe it's not 90 degrees. But anyway, we had to tilt the movement forward a little bit, because not only do they have to be level this way, they really should be level this way as well. So if you've got a clock that won't tick and yet it's perfectly level acrossways, check front to back and see how it is. So that's running nicely. It's fairly quiet because we've obviously got a bit of oil on the pellets, which what produced the tick-tock sound. But it's running really nicely. I'm not sure if it's totally in beat. It's close. It sounds pretty good. I might move the microphone closer and put the camera back in the stand. And you should be able to hear the tick-tock very clearly there. Sounds pretty even. And if a clock is out of beat, the tick-tock will sound uneven. So if I angle the thing across, hopefully it's stopped it now. Let me see if I can prop up one side a bit. Okay, I've propped up one side of the stand and you can hear the difference now. It sounds like it's ticking with a limp. That's the best way I think I've heard it described. So that's definitely out of beat. I'll take the little chock out that I just put in, and it's back to a fairly even beat now. Very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the hands on it, and we can get an idea of what time it is. I'm not going to worry about the face, and I'll set it to whatever time it is now, and we'll see how it goes as far as accuracy goes. We probably will have to adjust the length of the pendulum, which alters the speed of the clock, and we'll do that over a period of time. I'll run it for an hour first and see how close it is, and then we'll do it overnight and see how close it is, and we'll just keep adjusting the pendulum until we get it more accurate. And I'll leave it in this test stand for quite a few days. In fact, I might even see if it does the whole week. The springs are wound up fully. It should do the week. We don't have a gong, so it's not going to actually strike. The hammer will move. That won't matter. Good morning, guys. I'm out here this morning with my morning coffee. The clock is still running very nicely, so it ran overnight beautifully. You can see I put the hands on there last night, and I did set the time. It was about 8:15 in the evening, and as accurately as I could set it without having a face on there. And so it's now pretty well exactly 8:30, and the clock is showing around about 25 to 9. So it's running 5 minutes fast overnight. I'm pretty happy with that. That's actually not too bad. Probably it's running a whisker faster because everything's running smoothly now. So we can adjust the pendulum, and we just wind that bottom screw up and make the pendulum, wind the screw down, make the pendulum a little longer. We'll slow the clock up. It won't need very much, but I'm pleased that it's running nicely. It still sounds nice, the beat. So I'd say that's a really good sign that we got everything right. I will just make a minor adjustment this morning. I think I'll find somewhere else to put this stand because I want to leave it running for the week, and I need my bench for other jobs. But we'll leave it running for the week. I'll make minor adjustments each day, and then we just got to put it back in the case. Job will be finished. Okay, it's now Saturday evening. I'm in my little room where I've relocated the clock to on my messy workbench, and it hasn't missed a beat. So it's been running for 2 days straight now. It's I adjusted it yesterday, and now it's done a full 24 hours, and it's only about 5 minutes out in that time. So I'll keep doing minor adjustments. It's running very consistently, very smoothly. Great to come out to the room each day and just hear it gently ticking away. So I'll make another adjustment now, and we'll keep just doing little tweaks as we go. And hopefully we get a week out of it. The springs still look quite nice and tight after 2 days. So we'll check in soon. Another update now. It's been a further 3 or 4 days. We're up to Wednesday. So Wednesday morning, and the last 24 hours, it's showing about 20 past 10. In the last 24 hours, it's only gained about 1 minute, so I'm getting pretty accurate now. These movements probably won't get much more accurate than, say, 2 to 3 minutes for the week, so we're almost there. So tonight at about 8 p.m, it would have done 6 full days. And the springs there you can see are starting to open up a bit, but we're most part of the week done. Let's see if we can get a few more days out of it. I'll be putting it back in its case shortly, but I'm pretty happy with the time adjustments. I'll just keep tweaking it a little bit, and then we'll just have to make sure the strike is right with the hammer. We might have to do a little bit of bending of the hammer once we get it back in the case, but all going good. And the ticking continues beautifully into the 8th day, so I think it's going to last very well. even though they're an 8-day clock, it probably will do 10 or 12, maybe even a little bit more, but it does slow up right at the end as the spring unwinds more and more. There's still a bit of unwinding to do, but they're called an 8-day clock because within the 8 days they should maintain pretty good time. It might be 2 or 3, maybe 4 minutes out by the end of the week, but in the last few days it will get noticeably slower, and that's just the way they're made. The springs provide a varying amount of power which gradually decreases as they unwind, whereas your weight-driven clocks have an even amount of power all the way because gravity is the same. Anyway, I'm happy that it's run the week. It's been performing beautifully. In fact, I think we're down to about only a minute or so, and it's hard to tell now because I don't have the face on it. As far as, I think it was still gaining about a minute per day or something like that. Time to put it back in the case. We'll reassemble it all. We'll put the face on so that we can get a bit more accurate idea of the time. I'll rewind it again and I'll set it up at the shop, and we'll give it another week's test there and make sure the striking is operating as it should. Okay, let's remove the pendulum. We'll lay the test stand down and we can move the movement into its resting place. It's a bit like a heart transplant. All right, we'll save this test stand for another day. That will be handy. We better dig out our original screws. We do have to take the hands off, of course, to be able to put the face on. And we'll just put all the screws in loose for a start to make sure it's properly centered on in the right spot. Okay, I'm happy with that. We can tighten them all up. And it looks like our hammer will just need a little bit of adjustment there. We'll do that later. We can now refit the face. And before we tighten those up, we'll just make sure the key fits neatly in the keyholes. That's pretty good. Okay, now we can fit the hands. Now I'll put the minute hand on first, and we can then see where the clock's actually up to. So we need to find where it triggers the strike. There we go, that's triggered it there for o'clock. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. It did have to be 8, didn't it? So we can put that at the o'clock now, because it's on a square, it can go 4 positions. We know that's the right position. Actually, we need to put the hour hand on, and we can point that to the 8, and that just presses on. Make sure it's not touching the face. I think that's okay. We can do some fine adjustments later, and we can put that at 8. And we have our little domed washer. And then we have our little tapered pin, which is very tiny. And which way was the hole? Crossways, I think. Yep. And we can just press that pin in with some flat pliers. Doesn't need to be too hard as long as it doesn't fall out. We have no parts left over. We can put the pendulum back on it. We'll stand it up. And it's got a bit of a wobble up, but it is ticking again straight away. There we go, it's stabilised itself. Beautiful. So I'll wind them both up now, and we'll just adjust the hammer so that the strike sounds okay. And there she is in all its glory, running beautifully. I just double checked the beat to make sure it was ticking evenly. My bench here is perfectly level, so now a customer can take it and put it on their shelf or mantle or sideboard, and I'll just have to let them know to make sure the surface is level, or else chock the clock to be level. There are occasions when you can alter the beat so that the clock will run when it's sitting on an uneven surface. For example, if you've got a very old house with a mantle that's actually not level at all, and chocking the clock looks too uneven, you can actually adjust the pendulum or the crutch to allow the clock to run on a slightly odd angle, as long as the clock obviously looks all right where it sits. So there we go, job's finished, it's running beautifully. I've adjusted the chimes, well, the strike. I've got to stop saying chimes. It's only a little coil in there, so it doesn't make much of a melodic sound, but we'll wind it round to 8:30. And there's one strike for the 8:30. And if we wind it forward, we should get 9 strikes at 9 o'clock. There we go. Was everyone counting? I can't help myself. I always seem to count them when I hear them. Okay, so job is complete. I'll take that to the shop. We'll leave it run for another week or so just to make sure everything's fine. But I'm very happy with that job, and I hope the customer is too. So many thanks for watching, whoever bothered to watch, and the whole series, 5 videos. If you've just stumbled across this one, go back and look at them all. I've put them in a separate playlist. And I think I've shown, if you're a beginner at this, which I still consider myself a beginner, and this is the first complete dismantle and clean and service I've done on a striking clock. Obviously you've got twice the number of wheels as what you have on a normal time only one. I'm still learning, but I hope I've shown you that the sequence that we go through, that you've picked something up. This is the sort of video that I wanted to find when I was first pulling one apart. Anyone that knows their way around clocks and has some input, whether it's constructive criticism, whether it's something I've forgotten or overlooked, or whether there's just a better way of doing it, by all means add to the comments. That's where we all learn. So thanks for those that have followed through. I've had a few comments throughout the series. A couple of people mentioned about bushing, and I've got to get some gear to be able to do that myself, and I'll no doubt take you guys through it in another video where it's the blind leading the blind. But you know, I'm enjoying the learning curve. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the journey, even if you're not interested in clocks. It's just something that you might appreciate watching. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you in the next video. God knows what that would mean. I might get back onto some electronics things, or do some more unboxings, or another farm trip, or another something or other. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now.